Hey everybody, come on in, come on in. It's time for Coffee with Scott Adams, the best time of the day. And today will be, well, it's going to be a good one. A barn burner, if you will. Hello, Sweden. Good to have you in the house. Arizona, nice to have you. Yes, people from all over the world pouring in to enjoy the simultaneous sip. And all you need to enjoy it to its maximum potential. And really, why would you settle for less? All you need is a cup or a mug or a glass, a tankard, chalice or stein, a canteen, jug or flask, a vessel of any kind. Fill it with your favorite liquid. I think I may have mentioned I like coffee. Now join me for the unparalleled pleasure, the dopamine hit of the day, the thing that makes everything better. It's called the simultaneous sip. And it's going to happen right now. Go. So I'd like to say something about that Chauvin trial that I haven't heard anybody say directly, so let me say it. The judge was really good, in my opinion, just the parts we could say. And I didn't see much pushback from anybody else. I think there was the Dershowitz observation that maybe he should have done more to keep the jurists away from the news. But really? Really? How do you keep these jurists away from the news? They had a year of the news before they even got selected. Nothing changed after that point. So they were already tainted. There was no way to have a fair election or a fair trial. But I think the judge did a good job in a difficult trial. I would also say that the attorneys both did good jobs. I think the defense and the prosecution were both on their game. So at least we can take some comfort in that. Take some comfort in the fact that all the professionals, and I think even the jury, we'll talk about that, I think they were serious people doing pretty good work. And when you see that in public, you forget to call it out sometimes because we like to focus on what went wrong. But at least those professionals, I thought really, they should make you proud. As an American, the judge and all of the attorneys should make you proud. There's some more good news. The Perseverance rover up there on Mars just turned some carbon dioxide into oxygen. Did I mention on Mars? This is one of those stories where it's so mind-bogglingly awesome that there's nothing you can say about it except say it twice. The United States just put some hardware on Mars that turned carbon dioxide into oxygen on Mars. This was after testing out their flying helicopter on Mars. It's like anything that ends with on Mars is just still impresses me. I hope I never get bored by any of this stuff. Well, of course, the big story is you all saw it that as soon as we thought we were over with the George Floyd stuff, there's a 16-year-old young woman who got shot and killed by police. Now, if you saw the video, and assuming that there's nothing we didn't see on the video, that maybe this is the one-time video tells us what really happened, because video can be quite misleading, we know, but it looked pretty clear. And to me, it looked like a case of excellent police work. Now, of course, it was widely misreported by the illegitimate news that a policeman killed a woman for no reason, right? Some of the reporting was that the knife was already on the ground. I mean, basically completely misreported. But now we know from the video that the police officer not only did something that seems clearly within the rules of engagement, but really, really good police work. So here's my question. Why isn't he being put up for a commendation? Because I get that the public is really mad at this police officer, but his bosses, his supervisors, they've seen the video. They know that what he did wasn't just ordinary police work. It was really good police work. As in, If I could hire that cop for my police force, I'd want that cop. That was a split second, put his own life on the line. Because we've all seen the George Floyd trial, right? If you make a mistake in this context, you're going to jail. This cop put his life completely on the line. Derek Chauvin is now in a 7x10 concrete cell 23 hours a day for who knows how long. All right? This cop took that risk and took one shot, I think it was one shot, and was accurate and saved a life. So I feel as if his supervisors, I know that they're going to take a lot of heat and he's getting doxxed and all kinds of things, but that shouldn't stop you from putting him in for a commendation. Oh, somebody says it was 4 shots. But it certainly accomplished what he was trying to accomplish. So, although you could argue that 4 is too many, we'll probably hear that argument. But it does seem to me that if what we saw on the video is accurate and there's nothing else that we're missing, I don't know why he's not being put in for a commendation. And I feel like his supervisors owe him that as just a little bit of counter persuasion in the context of everybody blaming him for being a murderer, basically. So I feel like that would be fair. Now, if there's something we don't know about the story, that would be the usual situation. And by tomorrow, everything we know may be backwards. So keep an open mind that we might not know everything about this, even though it looks exactly like we know everything about this. How many times have we been fooled when we thought we knew everything about a situation? So don't be fooled. Well, the biggest news on social media, and it's quite a jaw dropper. And this should tell you everything you need to know about the state of corporate news. That it was a big story that Don Lemon and Chris Cuomo told the truth about a story. I'm not making that up. That's not an exaggeration. It's big news, on social media anyway. It's big news that Don Lemon and Chris Cuomo told the truth about a story that we can all see clearly because it's on the video about the young woman who got killed by the police. And here's what Don Lemon actually said. He said that when police roll up on the scene, they see people tussling around, someone has a knife, and their job is to protect and serve every life on that scene. Protect and serve every life. That's what Don Lemon said. Police job is to protect and serve every life on the scene. That gets really, really dangerously close to saying all lives matter, isn't it? I mean, it's not the same. He's saying that their duty is to protect and serve every life on the scene. But does that imply that every life matters? Because I feel that that would be kind of racist. At least that's what I've been told by CNN. So I don't know if this means that that they've gone full racist because they're doing the thing that I think they consider racist, saying that every life matters. But maybe that's a different concept, so they can get away with it. Over in India, the COVID is raging, and they've got a new death high and a new infection high. And I'm wondering what this does to the skeptics. Because didn't we believe that India was doing fine because allegedly they were taking malaria drugs like hydroxychloroquine, and allegedly they had lots of sun, maybe not as much air conditioning in some cases. Maybe they had some kind of herd immunity already. But maybe none of that's true. So if there's one thing we know about coronavirus is that we don't know anything about coronavirus. Every time we think we know something, it just turns out not to be the case. It's pretty consistent. So what do we know about India? Nothing really, right? Yeah, it's a double variant, but I can't believe it's only in India, right? Severity seems low, somebody says. Well, I imagine that part of this is that their data was really bad before, and maybe it's improving, or maybe the numbers are just so big that even bad data can't hide it anymore. But we don't know exactly what's going on in India, and that's kind of like everything else, where we don't know exactly what's going on with any country. It's just baffling to me that we still can't sort out why anything is happening. Why is it going up? Why is it going down? Now, we think it's because, at least in this country, vaccinations. And that's a pretty good theory. I think that's probably true. All right. Singer Ted Nugent, who is a COVID denier, has COVID and says it's the sickest he's ever been in his life. But it looks like he'll survive, at least so far. So I don't think that'll change his opinion about how dangerous it was, as long as he survives. But we'll see. One of the reasons to not be a coronavirus skeptic, I feel like the universe owes it to you to give it to you if you're a skeptic. Like you've got a little extra danger, not in any rational scientific way, but doesn't it seem like if you talk out about, as soon as you become an advocate for something, you're going to get that thing? It just feels like he's begging the universe to give it to him. Yeah, Ted Nugent is quite a healthy weight, and so even though he's a certain age, I feel like he'll get through this fine. We hope so. Nancy Pelosi went full racist yesterday. Here's what she said in public. She said, "Thank you, George Floyd, for sacrificing your life for justice. Because of you and because of thousands, millions of people around the world who came out for justice, your name will always be synonymous with justice." That sounds racist to me. And I had to think about it for a while to figure out why. Because my first reaction is just, there's something wrong with this, but it's hard to put my finger on it exactly. And here's what I think bothered me about it. It's overtly racist, isn't it? Because I can't imagine this being said about a white person. It feels like this is only something an old white lady would say about a black person. And here's what's killing me. You've heard the phrase about the soft bigotry of low expectations. To imagine that George Floyd is a hero as opposed to just a victim is sort of promoting him beyond what feels right for a role model. And there's a fairly consistent thing that we see on the left, is that their victims, they try to turn into heroes. And the victims sometimes are not your best role model. For example, even Martin Luther King was ultimately a victim. I mean, he was killed. And in his case, there's more good than bad about emulating him. But there's a consistency to victims being martyred. And I'm not sure this is a good strategy. If you look at the strategy on the right, you'll find that the people on the right idolize Thomas Sowell. People are very high on Candace Owens, Michael Jordan. What do those three people have in common? Three people that people on the right like a lot. Thomas Sowell, Candace Owens, Michael Jordan. What do they have in common besides being black? All right. One of the things they have in common is they refuse to be victims, and they're positive role models, meaning that they're just trying to make the world better, and they're not victims. And I just feel as if it is such a disadvantage to idolize victims. It's just not a good strategy. Now, I've said this before. The victims are real and it's true, and we can't forget them, and you don't want to minimize them. But that's completely different from making them your role models. It would have been far more constructive for the left, for themselves. The best thing that could have happened is to say that Chauvin was guilty according to the jury. So, we've taken care of that. The jury has dealt with it. He's guilty 3 times. But that doesn't give anybody else a pass. And I feel like if you give George Floyd a pass for his behaviors that led up to it, again, it's the cop who went to jail and the jury has spoken. But giving George Floyd a complete pass, as Pelosi did, feels like that setting the bar too low. Something you do only for somebody that you had a negative opinion of, that you didn't think the success was somehow an option or something. Like, why would you focus on the least role model kind of behavior you could ever think of, which was, drug use, maybe some criminal behavior, resisting arrest. I mean, it's such a bad strategy. So if you care about Black America, as I do, it hurts to watch them accept or pursue a strategy that couldn't possibly work for them, right? This has nothing to do with me. Like, I'm not really directly involved with any of this stuff. But I feel bad that they don't have a strategy that could work for them. Here's a little framing thing that might be fun. We keep hearing about everybody is brainwashed, right? We hear that the QAnon people, they're brainwashed. We hear that the school kids who are in critical race theory, people on the right, say they're getting brainwashed. Antifa, what's up with that? Are they brainwashed? How about white supremacists? How does a white supremacist stay a white supremacist? Probably brainwashed. What would happen? Let me just put this out here. This is a thought experiment, okay? What would happen if somebody or some organization put together a deprogramming program, but it included all of them? It's the all of them that's the key part of the idea. So somebody builds an actual organization with funding, resources. Maybe they got a web page or a book or whatever, and they built it all to reprogram people who have fallen into any kind of brainwashed cult-like thinking that's unproductive. And it would be completely voluntary, right? Of course. Nobody would have to be deprogrammed. You'd have to want it. So, there's that. But imagine that you went and said, yes, my organization deprograms people from brainwashing. We include everything from white supremacists to Antifa to the school kids who are learning critical race theory to QAnon. And you don't defend any of your decisions about why anybody's in that group or out. So you don't say, well, here's the reason that we're doing this group. You just take it as a given, and you just offer the service. And you say, look, it's not even up to us to tell you you're brainwashed. If you feel you are, we can help you. So you have to come to us. But we're specializing in these groups because these are the groups who are most likely to need a little help. That would completely change. And by the way, this would be an example of causing people to think past the sale. To think past the sale. If you're talking about how to deprogram somebody, you've already gotten them to accept that it needs to be done. Speaking of programming, the new phrase is get woke, go broke, don't buy Coke. I added that last part. Get woke, go broke, don't drink Coke. So Rasmussen is following up on some of their reporting from yesterday, or their polling. 33% of Black adults say they are less likely to buy Coca Cola because of the company's involvement in the Georgia election law controversy, as do 35% of white adults and 44% of other non-white adults. So Black adults and white adults, almost exactly the same opinion. At least, the 33 to 35% of them say they'll buy less Coca-Cola products because of Coke getting involved. Now, if these numbers are anywhere near close, and I'm sure that they are, at least in terms of what people say they're doing, but whether that translates into actual actions is separate. But how would you imagine now the first wave of corporate CEOs who got involved in the Georgia stuff? They didn't know exactly how that was going to go. Maybe they thought it would be a plus because it would make them look good as a company. But now they know it's not. What happens to the next CEO who thinks they should get involved? Well, the next CEO doesn't have the luxury of knowing it won't work. Because Coca-Cola just proved it doesn't work for profits. I mean, it might work for whatever their social objective is, but it's not going to work for the stockholders. And ultimately, that's their primary goal, is to make stockholders happy, even if they say it's not. So what happens to the world now that there's an official national polling company that says, effectively through the data, it says that getting a little too woke is a disaster for your company? What happens to the next one? They can't claim they didn't know. Here it is. I mean, you could Google it, you could check it. So any CEO who makes this mistake in the future probably needs to get fired, because now you know what the outcome is. Before you didn't. So the CEO of Coke, you could agree with him or disagree with him, but you'd have to agree that he couldn't have known how this would turn out. Couldn't have known. But the next one knows. They can't do it. I think it's done. I mean, I think this might put a damper on things. You should expect a series of Dilbert cartoons focusing on the CEO getting woke and what that does to profits within Dilbert's company. So we'll see a little bit of that. Not in the same topic, the wokeness, but I'll come up with some, analogous wokeness that doesn't get me in trouble. We got some new fake Russia news. I don't feel like we could go 1 month without some fake Russia news. So here's the fake Russia news, which could turn out to be true. Let me say this as clearly as possible. This news, which I'm calling fake, I'm only calling it fake because it looks so obviously fake. But anything's possible, right? Is there some chance I'm wrong? Yeah, just like everything else, right? There's always some chance. But let me tell you the story, and let me see if you think this is real news or fake news. U.S. intel officials have identified Russia as the likely culprit. Now, isn't that the beginning of most stories? I feel like 25% of all of our national stories they start with this. U.S. intel officials have identified Russia as the likely culprit, and then you just fill in what's the rest of the story. But they all seem to start with that, don't they? Well, we think Russia's the culprit. We're not going to show you the proof, but we've got it. Not only do we have it, but we convinced 16 other intelligence agencies that we really have it, and they say we have it too. So they agree with us, which makes 17 intel agencies on the same side. How can you doubt us now? But here's the story that our intel has identified Russia as the likely culprit. Apparently, there's a secret, suspected Neuroweapon. Yeah, a weapon that can scramble people's brains from a distance, possibly or probably the same secret weapon that was used against our embassies in Cuba, and then something in Canada happened as well. So all these people with headaches and actually verified brain damage, and it seems to be coming from a weapon that nobody's ever seen. Nobody's ever seen it, but it's a weapon, and it's probably the Russians. Somebody says it's smartphones. Oh, you troublemaker. You troublemaker. Yeah. Now, I don't think it's smartphones, but you do have to wonder what are the odds that this is a real story. Well, I would say that given especially the source that I saw it from, I'm guessing this is an intel fake news. It doesn't look like a real story to me. Now, I want you to all remember that I'm making this prediction because I've been making it since the Cuban Neuroweapon story, that it's completely fake news. There is no Neuroweapon being aimed at our diplomats or our soldiers. That's my prediction. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong, but I'm going to be spectacularly wrong. But I'm not wrong until you see the weapon. All right? If you don't see the weapon, you got a little bit of a Bigfoot situation. Why can't we ever get a good picture of the weapon? All right. I've told you there's a trap called the Skeptic's Trap, which I just gave a name to. And it is that once you become known as that skeptic on whatever the topic is, you have a great incentive or pressure to just keep being that skeptic, even if the information is no longer supporting your skeptical claim. And I feel like this is a trap that is going to happen to a lot of our coronavirus skeptics, even if they're right about some stuff. So skeptic Dr. Naomi Wolf got booted off of Twitter temporarily. Hold on. So Naomi Wolf got booted off Twitter for tweeting about a study that she claimed came out of Stanford, which she claimed was peer review, in which the study claimed that masks don't work. So you say to yourself, well, wait a minute, that sounds pretty good. Stanford study, peer reviewed. Wow, we finally have proof that masks don't work, except it wasn't really Stanford and it wasn't peer reviewed and it's completely non-credible. So totally debunked. And I think, I'm not positive, but I think this is probably the same thing that Steve Cortez got bumped off of Twitter. He's back. But I think he might have gotten bumped off because of the same fake study. So there is a fake study that says masks don't work. It's attributed to Stanford. They had nothing to do with it. It looks like it's just a fake study. So she got trapped by that. I don't think she knows yet that it was fake. Alan Dershowitz has weighed in on this Chauvin outcome, and he seems confident that it will be reversed in the Supreme Court, largely because of the too much news seeping into the jurors and they being at personal risk based on their knowing they had personal risk. So we think that maybe they didn't use the facts. Now, as Dershowitz points out, and I think this is important, it doesn't mean Chauvin is innocent. Just because the trial may or may not be reversed because the jurors were too influenced by potentially outside statements by politicians, etc., that doesn't mean they got the wrong answer. It just means you have to reverse it because there would be too much of the wrong kind of pressure, so you couldn't feel it's a credible outcome, even if it was a right outcome. So I always make this distinction between what is credible from what is true or right. They don't have to be the same. Right? You can have a credible study that's wrong. You can have a credible opinion that's wrong. Yeah, and I'll say again that the jury played this perfectly. And until I get counter information, which is very likely, we could find out tomorrow that the jury is a bunch of ne'er-do-wells who just wanted to break the system. Who knows? Anything could happen. But as of now, in the same way that I assume innocence until proven guilty, which I did with Chauvin, I presumed his innocence as hard as I could, and then when the jury spoke, I accepted that. I didn't watch the evidence like they did. If their opinion unanimously is guilty, I'm good with that. Now, there are two possibilities that they voted guilty on all counts. One is that they thought he was guilty on all counts, right? We're not going to rule that out, are we? That they actually just voted their conscience. They all thought he was guilty on all counts. Boom, go home for the day. Maybe. The other possibility, and by the way, if that was their legitimate opinion, they saw the evidence, I didn't, not all of it, I accept that as a credible outcome. But what if they were really sending a message to the rest of us by so quickly voting guilty on all three counts that even the most optimistic of us said, that's a little bit too on the nose, isn't it? Like it's a little bit too exactly what the, let's say the protesters, et cetera, wanted. It's a little too on the nose. Feels like a message. It feels like a hostage message that we got that said, effectively, we don't know what to do, we're in trouble, we're going to vote 3 guilties, get the message. And if that was the message, I think the Supreme Court's going to hear it. Meaning they're going to hear that maybe the jurors were sending a message. Just speculation, right? Pure speculation. Can't read minds. I don't know what anybody's thinking. I couldn't know that. But so far the facts suggest 2 interpretations which are both valid at the moment until one of them gets ruled out by future. Somebody says Stockholm Syndrome. Maybe a little bit of that. What is disengagement syndrome? I don't know what that means. Yeah, it would be a stealth kind of jury nullification. Basically, they would just kick it up to the higher courts, knowing that it would get overturned. But in the meantime, they've covered themselves perfectly, which I would respect. I mean, if they did it just to protect their families, I'm okay with it. They have that right. Let me say this, I'd love to see your opinion. Suppose you had a juror, let's just take it as a hypothetical, who legitimately felt that his family would be in danger. We won't even make it him or herself. We'll just say their family would have been in danger. And they vote to save their family, but it puts let's say, a person in prison. Did they make the right decision? What do you think? Did they make the right decision if they protect their family, but it puts, hypothetically, an innocent man in prison? I'm not saying that Chauvin's innocent. I'm saying hypothetically, would that be okay with you? Somebody says I would drop out of the jury. Yeah, that would be the smarter play, right? Yeah, I think whoever said I would drop out of the jury, that's the only legitimate play. But I don't know if you can do that if you get all the way to the end. That's a pretty tough decision if you've gone through the entire trial, because you don't want to be the one that wastes everybody's time. That's not good either. That's not going to help you. So if you don't drop out sort of right away, I'll tell you when they could have dropped out. The day that there was a public statement, and they probably heard about it. Yeah, the day that Maxine Waters made her statement, any of the jurors could have stood up and said, I'm out, and nobody would have faulted them. Would you? If we had spent millions of dollars and all this time to have this trial, but the minute that Maxine Waters was done speaking, in what sounded like a threatening way, if one of the jurors had stood up and say, Your Honor, I'm out. Here's the reason, and you can't keep me here. I'm out. And just walked out the door. Would you blame them? Would they go to jail? Would they be in contempt of court? I don't think so. I don't think so. I think all you'd have to do is play the Maxine Waters video and say, look, I'm out. It wouldn't matter what anybody said. No, listen to it. I'm out. I'm out. There's no conversation. There's no argument. There's no debate. Listen to this. I'm out. I'm now going to walk out that door. I'm no longer on your jury. You guys can work it out. But I'm out. No, as long as you did it professionally, as long as you did it with full transparency, you could just walk right out the door. I don't think you would get a penalty for that. Now, of course, the judge could probably try to twist your arm with threats or whatever, but I don't think he'd stop you. In the end, he or she would let you walk right out. Completely legitimate for an American citizen to protect their family. Completely. All right. Contempt of court. Yeah, I just don't think that the judge would pull the trigger on contempt. If it's even an option. I don't know if it is. Somebody says it's a message, not Stockholm Syndrome. Let's see that opinion. Jury has not experienced violence or been saved by their captors. Yeah, but you know, the Stockholm Syndrome, if you're talking more generally, if you're just sort of, trapped with a bunch of people and you've got certain influences on you, it's not exactly Stockholm Syndrome, correct? But, you can feel that it's in that same direction somehow. alternate juror would take over. Well, they had already been released at one point, but yeah, if it was before that, you could do that. All right, I think that's all I needed to say today. So I'm going to go do some other things because I think we've covered all the news that we care about. And remember, my Dilbert NFT is for sale until May 1st. I don't think people will bid it up until just about the last day. So keep an eye on that. And I will talk to you tomorrow.